Has there ever been a time when you've said things or done things and afterwards thought, I wish I didn't do that. I wish I didn't say
What,
that.
in my marriage?
Yes, yeah.
Of course. Yesterday.
I love that. How do you, because you've been together for 31 years, how do you rectify something like that when you know, because there's a difference between being spiteful or being silly, but like when you really feel like I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have said that, like how do you address something that?
You know, that's the practice of relationships, right? After 31 years, yeah, we still do it, but you know it quicker. And then you apologize, you know? You learn how to say my bad, right? And that takes a second, right? That's why I talk about relationships in the light. I talk about marriage because I just think that, number one, most people don't talk about it. Like our parents, you didn't talk about your marriage. You didn't talk about your feelings. You didn't talk about, your parents didn't tell you about the challenges that we're facing. So why? Why don't we share the whole experience? Because what happens is that by not knowing, you hit in your relationship some natural, like understandable rough patches and you want to quit. And it's like, oh, no. That's not quit worthy. That's just the nature of things. That's why I joked. It's like, oh, you're mad at your partner? You're mad for a year and you think the marriage is over? Nah, you're going to have decades. I don't know if I like you, because over the span of a 30-year marriage, yeah, you cobble together enough arguments and you got a decade. That's just the way it goes, but you don't quit on it. You learn from it. And that's what sustaining a relationship is. It's the choice to figure it out, not to quit when it gets hard. So yeah, I said something that I didn't mean to say. Year 5, we might have had hurt feelings and it would have taken days to rectify it. Year 30, it's like, there she goes again, or there he goes again. I know how to talk to him about it and when, because we've practiced it. We've made a lot of mistakes. We've gotten it wrong. And after 31 years, we're getting better at it. And it gets better and better and better. If you lived with your roommate for 30 years, you would hate them, but it wouldn't be some defining thing. You have friendships. If they last long, you're going to have some falling out. Why do we put so much pressure on marriage to not be hard? It's the natural hardest thing you will ever do, which is to try to build a life with another person who wasn't raised in your shoes, who has a totally different temperament, right? And you're like having other people with them, you know, you bring other lives and other personalities into the mix, and then life is happening. Of course, it's going to be hard, but I wouldn't trade in my marriage for anything in the world, with all the ups and downs, with all the running for president stuff. I was like, why'd you do that? I mean, talk about that being a big gaping thing in our lives, but the good has outweighed it. And if we hadn't hung in there, we would have missed all the good. And that's what I tell young people. Like, first of all, pick well. Pick somebody you respect and like. Start there, right? And then remember that that's who they are. And then understand that with that, they are going to be, and you are going to be deeply, deeply flawed. You're going to make a whole lot of mistakes, right? But in the end, you can look that person in the eye and you go, you're still the person that I like and love and respect, and we can figure this out. So I share that because I don't want people looking at me and Barack like #couples goals and not know that, no, there are some broken things that happen even in the best of marriages. I think there are some objective quit-worthy things like criminality, abuse. But hey, that's me. There's some people who love through a whole lot of things. So I think that has to be individual. But if I were talking to my daughters, I wouldn't want them to stay in a marriage that made them feel oppressed, that was an overall negative to who they were. I do think there are reasons to walk away from marriage, friendship, jobs, a whole lot of things. So yeah, I have a clear list of the non-negotiables, but everybody has their own. We are two very independent, ambitious, smart people, and complex. You know, as individuals, we're dynamic in, you know, I'm not saying that as an ego trip. And I learned, it took me a while to learn that there's no way we could be everything to each other. We have different interests, different goals. There was this stage in my marriage where I thought that's what a partner was supposed to be. You should call me all the time. We should talk all the time. We should be each other's best friends all the time. Our marriage got better when I got better about that, because I think he already had that independence, this notion of, I love you. Even if I don't talk to you today, that to me is like, I don't need that. I felt like I needed more of that. As I got older, right, I got more mature, more clear about my own goals, I realized that he can't be responsible for my happiness. I have to be responsible for that. I have to define it for myself. I have to learn how to achieve it. My husband is definitely a part of that, but he is not. I cannot put him in the center of my happiness. That freed me up to let him be him and let me be me. So I have friends who give me things that my husband doesn't give me. I have girlfriends. One distinction that we have is like, I'm a talker. All right, when I sit down with my girlfriends, we can talk for days. I mean, literally for days. We can take a break for lunch, but we can talk. My husband's not. He can talk, but he'll come by a friendship session, 9 o'clock in the morning, I have a friend staying with me, and he's like, what are y'all talking about? It's like, well, we're just now getting into our kids, and we're going to talk about each one of them separately for like an hour. He's like, I couldn't do that. He can't be that for me. But I have really good, mostly girlfriends who give me that. We will dissect life to the bitter. We will wring everything out of every subject. Yes. And he's like, I think I'm done. And it's like, well, you can go be done, because I've got her and we just got started. We got 12 more hours to go, right? I had to disconnect from all of those beliefs, right? And every couple is different. I know people who are each other's best friends. I have friends who are in relationships where they talk like every hour. I'm like, are you talking to him again? Nothing changed. It's up to the individuals to define that for themselves. For Barack and I think you should be clear about that, because the other thing is that when we hold on internally to an expectation of the other person, we don't even share it. So now we're mad that you haven't even fulfilled something I never even told you I needed. That takes time and it takes work, which is why marriage is hard, because you'll have the tendency to live in your head and live out the image of what you want them to be. And you haven't even communicated that to them. That's just one little fraction of the challenge of marriage and friendship and all of that. It's hard. It takes time, but it's worth it. One of the most important practices is deliberately turning that off for a moment or more than a moment. We're reading too much. We're taking too much in. We are constantly being fed by images, and that's become the norm. And we've been sort of marketed that that's cool. That's what we should want. But our brains are not. We are not that sophisticated a species. We have not evolved enough to be able to take in that much information on a constant basis. And our kids certainly are not prepared to handle it. I think that plays a huge role in the higher rates of depression and suicide among young people. They've got to let their brains rest from the noise. Even though, we're all trying to fix everything, everyone needs a break from it, right? So I'm very deliberate about knowing that I can't take all that in, and we're getting it in such a sort of misinterpreted way. We've got, confirmation bias. We're reading only what we already believe. And I know I have to be very deliberate about, understanding that a lot of the information I'm getting isn't even complete. I do filter, and then I develop habits that shut my brain off to thinking. I wrote in The Light about knitting, which is a hobby that I developed over quarantine. It shuts your brain down and allows your hands, the motion, to take over. And in that way, I found that it is meditative. And that's what meditation is. It's quieting your noisy mind. And some of us can't connect to meditation, but I think we need it. I think biologically, we need to shut that part of ourselves down to get a rest from it. And find that knitting does it, exercise does it, learning something physical shuts my mind down. I mean, I've taken up tennis, and there's nothing that shuts my mind down than running after a green ball and trying to figure out, move your feet, hit the ball, follow through. It's like, yeah, that shuts my mind down. For the hour or 90 minutes that I'm doing that thing, I'm not worrying, I'm breathing, I'm outside, I'm letting the sun hit my face. Those habits and routines of creating something, right? We do that less and less now. Everything is all in the mind. It's all technology. But I think we need something where the thing I love about knitting is that at the end of it, I've made something, It's just satisfying in a very different way from problem solving or analysis. Building, creating, painting, drawing, fixing, putting something real into the world that came from your own hands, something small, That's why I talk about the power of small in the light we carry, because a lot of times our brains are trying to do the big fix. And that's when we feel hopeless and we're tired, because most of us don't have the power to fix anything at a big scale. But we can focus on the small things that we have control over, making a sweater for your daughter, helping mentor a child in your neighborhood, loving the children you bring into the world and making sure they have everything they need. That's where change happens. And when I do those kinds of activities, I meditate into that power, right? That small power, that there is satisfaction from hitting a stupid ball over a net and getting a good swing out of it. It's like, it makes the day better because I served the ball right, or I finished a scarf.